Okay. I think it's being alright. I think it's behaving now. My OBS is telling me that some weird things are going on with my internet, but then, Twitch says that it's not, so I'm not real sure who to believe. I think somebody's lying to me, and I'm not sure who. So, we're gonna try it. If my internet's not cooperating with me, I had this issue last night as well. If it's not gonna cooperate with me, I may need to, we can do this another time. But I'm going to try it. I think it's going to behave. If, does it seem good at the moment? Does it seem alright? I have my little disclaimer and my rules up just because rules are a little different for this type of stream. Since this is primarily it's an interview rather than just playing a game or something with everybody. So, if you ever need to look at them, I do have some commands for that. And then I also added a sources command. Sources. Which is basically, those are the sources that I used to do my research for the interview today. But, let me move over. Hi! Hello! Goodness gracious. So we are going to be talking about Coraline today, which is super exciting. I like Coraline a lot. Coraline is one of my childhood movies. But I have Tyler with me because I asked Tyler what movie he wanted to talk about, and this is what he wanted to talk about. And gonna kind of run through the disclaimers really quick. I'm not a film analyst. I do not have a film degree. I do not have a psychology degree. We're just talking about a movie that we like because we're dorks. And the rules for this, it is a little bit lower chat interaction. It is an interview, so I am going to be kind of focusing on Tyler and talking about the movie with him. I do have a new redeem, though, for the car chats. So if you look in the redeems, I have a suggest a question redeem. So if you have a question that you want to ask that we aren't covering, you can redeem that and let me, and it will, like, I'll write it down and we can talk about it at the end, okay? So if anything does come up that you want to ask, feel free. If we don't end up getting to your question, just because we are running like a little bit over, please don't get upset. I'm going to try to get to, if anybody has a question though, I'm going to try to get to everyone. So, So I think that we're good to all, I'll strap into the car. Okay, who's Steve Jobs? That brings up another rule. It is a lower chat interaction, however, please try to keep chat on topic. So, to the best of my knowledge, Steve Jobs does not have a starring role in this film. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was, maybe it's like a... like a serious, like a... Oh, what is it called whenever someone uses, like, a fake name? I guess it's just called a fake name. An alias. That's what it is. Okay. So I think we're good to all strap into the car, though. So, whoa. That's not the car! We're in the car now. Tyler, would you like to introduce yourself? You can be heard now.
Hello, everybody. It is your local graveyard barker here. Hello, Bark Bark is me.
It is him. I hope that you like the, I hope you like the little Muppet I drew for him. I wanted to make sure that he had something. He has, we stopped, by Pawbucks on the way here, so we got a little pup cup.
Yeah, just for me.
He has a little pup cup with a little bone sticking out of it. I can reach over and I can pet him. Pet the dog.
Pet the dog. Oh, big hand. Arrow.
There, I'm scratching his ears.
Gotta keep me hydrated.
hydrated. So yeah, it took
Hydrated
a
and ear scratches.
little while for us to actually get this set up because the first time I wanted to do it, that was when I was having the issues with the asset that I was using before, and that's why I commissioned this one. This is actually what this asset is for, is these interviews. And the after that, we just had a hard time getting it set up to, like, finding a time to do them. But I think that we finally got it figured out. So let me. How's your day going, hun?
It's going pretty well. I am clean and I am ready for a good old-fashioned car ride. You know dogs love those. So clean for once, I mean.
Clean for once. Yeah, we I took him before we got into the car. I took like the rag and I spit on it a little bit and I like rubbed all the dirt off his face. Just scrubbed his face real good.
You know, just a little hose outside the back of the mausoleum.
Yeah, I hit him with the hose.
Just a hit of the hose.
I'm noticing I'm having a little bit of trouble with my camera. So give me just 1 sec. I'll see if I can fix that. Feel free to talk to chat if you would like to, hun, while I do that.
Yeah, so I am super duper excited for this. This movie was one of my favorites, though it wasn't necessarily started that way. But I am just super excited to talk about it and have fun and maybe learn some new things. I think that will be fun. Big fun.
Yeah, because you've never read the book. This is what you had said.
Correct. I have never in my entire dog years of existence read the book. But I have watched a movie a countless number of times. Way too many to count, actually.
No, it is a very, very good movie.
Oh, so good. So much fun. I remember so many things, but I will save those for the actual chat.
Okay, kind of getting right into it then. Whenever we were talking about this, you said you had seen this movie many, many times. Can you remember the first time you saw the movie?
I can, actually. The first time I saw the movie was when it first came out, which I believe was 2009. I watched it in theaters. It was one of my first 3D movies that I had watched at the time. I watched it with my family, and I just remember being blown away by the effects. I thought they were so cool.
Yeah, this movie came out in 3D.
Yeah, and we got the chance to watch it in 3D because they did the thing where they do the double showings, like where it's not in 3D and then in 3D, and of course we wanted 3D. I wanted things popping out at me.
Yeah, you can definitely tell, like, there's a lot of shots in the film itself where you can tell that it was intended to be 3D even when you're not watching in 3D. They do that a lot with the other mother's hands, I noticed.
Yeah. Her hands, anything dealing with like sewing needles, I think, too.
Yeah, which was like, it was a choice, I'll say, because like a lot of people are pretty like adverse to sharp objects coming towards their eyes.
Yeah, I remember very vividly the intro scene with the sewing needle poking out of the button and just kind of swishing around. And I remember leaning my head back and just going, "Whoa, hold on."
Yeah. A lot of needle imagery, a lot of like the buttons and the buttons are one of the like most iconic parts of a lot of the character design, I'd say.
Most definitely agree.
Hmm.
I really, really liked, though, because I'm not particularly scared of needles in any capacity, really. So
Hmm.
I thought it was fun. My most of my family, however, did not take so kindly to it.
Oh, are they a bit more averse to like needles and stuff than you?
My youngest sister, especially, yes, very adverse.
Yes, because you had you watched this with your sisters a lot.
Hmm.
You were not the youngest.
No, I am the
Okay,
oldest.
you're the old. I thought you. Oh, okay. So you were the oldest of the litter.
Correct. The oldest, the runt. Though in my eyes, I am the biggest, and I won't be told
Oh yeah,
otherwise.
you are the shortest one, aren't you?
Not technically. I'm the middle height. My sister is a hair taller than me, the youngest
Mm.
one.
Mm.
Amazon dog. Bigger husky. Just is what
Mm-hmm.
it is.
You're a toy husky,
Yeah.
a little guy, a short king. I'm talking a lot of
Of
shit
course.
for some, like, despite the fact that you are taller than me.
Yeah. My family is just huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember you mentioning that they're all pretty tall.
Yeah, even the shortest of us is 5'8".
Mm-hmm. So whenever you were watching this as a kid, though, was it so? Coraline is regarded as like being a pretty like, even for children, like a pretty scary movie. Was it a movie that frightened you when you were young?
No, I don't think it really frightened me. There were certain scenes where it was very suspenseful and I was like
Mm-hmm.
on the edge of my seat, but I'd never found myself being scared of it.
That was my pet.
All
Sorry.
well, not the whole movie. There was a couple of scenes where I jumped purely because I was like, that is spooky.
Mm-hmm. So Coraline is it's a beloved movie. A lot of people really, really like this movie. A lot of people have really, really fond memories of this movie. Of course, there was that like a group of parents and like adults, I suppose, that did think that Coraline might be too dark for kids. Like that the theming was too dark and that was too scary. How do you feel about that kind of like that take on it? I suppose. Do you feel like this movie might be a little intense for its intended like age group, or
I think for like younger kids, maybe like 8, 7 below, yeah. But I mean, there's no bad words. There's some mildly disturbing imagery. Nothing that's like super standoutish to me to think that it wasn't really a movie that was okay
oh,
for kids to watch. I mean,
mm-hmm. Oh, I hit my desk. I apologize. Continue.
speed bump.
Yeah, we hit something. We gotta keep going. We can't stop.
Can't stop now. But I think for the demographic that it was, because it was like, wasn't it like PG-13, I believe,
I
or
believe
was
it's
it all
PG.
ages?
I believe it's PG.
PG. Yeah. I think the parental guidance is more than enough for this movie. I never saw anything in it that particularly stood out to me as bad.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman actually did write Coraline for his daughter. He began writing Coraline when she was 4 years old. And I think it is like a matter of like knowing the kid that you're showing it to. Because he wrote Coraline for his daughter because those were the kind of things that she was interested in. Like, she would come home and tell him stories about, like, evil witches and, like, ghosts and stuff. And, like, I think a lot of kids kind of, like, have a fascination with that kind of stuff when they're exposed to it first time. Like the paranormal and, and a lot of fairy tales are quite dark anyways. Because Coraline is, like, it's a very gothic style story.
Mm-hmm. Very fairy tale-esque inspired. I always got the oh, what was it? Like Nightmare Before Christmas sort of vibes.
A lot of people attribute it to Tim Burton. A lot of people are really surprised when they find out that it's not a Tim Burton film.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily surprised just because I had paid attention to the information at the beginning of it, but
You read.
yeah.
You can read, is
I
what you're flexing.
I operated my eyes, yes.
Yeah, the
being
director was actually Henry Selick, I believe is how you say it.
Yeah.
And he had actually written the script for Coraline like years prior to it ever being produced. It's just nobody wanted to make it. Like horror for children, which is what Neil Gaiman, like, when he wrote it, that is what he categorized it as. He wrote it to be horror for children. It really wasn't a thing. So a lot of people were like, I don't think that you can write that. I don't think that will sell.
But it sure did, didn't it?
No, it did. Like, kids love creepy shit. A lot of kids really like creepy shit.
That's what a lot of older people don't seem to understand sometimes, I think. It's like, yeah, when certain things come, you know, kids shouldn't see this, but I don't think that this movie fell into that category. It had mildly disturbing things and a little bit of like the ew, gross. But other than that, I mean, the gross moments or the moments where you're like, whoa, were more of just like a flash and then gone. It's like,
yeah,
nothing crazy, nothing that honestly I feel like most kids like know about and or talk about to each other.
yeah. There is like a little bit of that like gray area of like when you are a kid, you understand like what you talk about with other children, but once you breach that kind of gap into becoming an adult, like, kids learn stuff at such a fast rate now, it's hard to actually gauge what they do and don't talk about. Because obviously, like, certain things they're not going to talk about in front of, like, their parents. So it is really hard, and it is, like, ultimately, it is, like, a parent responsibility to, like, monitor what your kids are watching and, like, making sure that they're being exposed to things at a healthy rate, I suppose. And I think that Coraline is a really good example of, like, it can be beneficial developmentally to children to show them darker themes, and I think Coraline did it safely.
Yeah, there was nothing that stood out to me as like this should be never be shown to a child or anything like that. I mean, I was one whenever I watched it.
Yeah, like, yeah, I was of like the I was of like the age demographic that it was targeted at when it came out. I feel like I think just people like often get uncomfortable when it comes to like talking about darker themes and like more serious topics with children. So whenever a movie breaches it first and they aren't prepared for it, I think it freaks them out a little.
But I suppose that's hence why it has the PG rating. You know, most people often forget that means parental guidance, which means, you know, you got to have a parent with you or they go with you to watch it, which my parents did. And, like, a lot of people seem to forget that fact. And I think it did everything that it intended to do pretty well without, like, breaching over what I would consider safe for children at the time. Because, again, I was a little bit on the outskirts of its demographic.
Yeah, not by much, though.
No, not by much at all.
a essay that I was reading in preparation to talk about this was A Girl in the Dark with Monsters, The Convergence of Gothic Elements in Children's Literature in Neil Gaiman's Coraline, written by Jose Roberto Severa Vargas for the, I believe it was University of Costa Rica. He was talking about uh, kind of like categorizing Coraline as gothic literature. Like he was mostly talking about the novella. And there were references like how kind of like being exposed to I suppose like the other world was beneficial for Coraline's development into maturity, I suppose, because a lot of it has to do with the fact that she's, I guess for lack of a better like way to phrase it, bored. She's like bored, and she doesn't feel as though she gets the attention that is needed from her parents, which she doesn't. Both the book and the film do a pretty good like job of framing the fact that Coraline is not necessarily getting the attention from adults that she should be at that age.
Yeah, the developmental attention that she would need, or at the very least, crave at that time.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of goes into Coraline was a little bit, I suppose, controversial because in children's media, love is often one of those like all-powerful forces. It's like the save the day, love will make everything okay type of forces, and Coraline challenges that by making love this thing that can be superficial or manipulative.
Yeah. I actually, yeah, I agree with that. That makes sense.
Because you hear it from the other mother all the time. She says she says I love you to Coraline the entire movie. And a lot of it is intended to be manipulative. She's like, I know, I love you, all right, don't leave me, I'll die without you. Like, all very kind of just manipulative statements to say to a child.
Mm-hmm. Especially children that haven't been necessarily receiving that kind of love. That's something that they want to hear.
Mm-hmm. So it does kind of, it did, like, breach the topic of, like, teaching the hard lesson that, like, just because someone says they love you doesn't mean that they have your best intentions in mind, or kind of, like, breaching the topic that, like, sometimes people say I love you with the intention to control you.
Right. And maybe also, too, the aspect of, like, within her real parents in mind, the fact that though they may not say it as often or do all the things that they probably should do, they may be trying their best. And it's not that they don't, but that they're doing their best to convey that.
Yeah. That was something that the essay also kind of talked about, was like the love that Coraline is receiving from the other mother is idealized. It's like perfect love. Whereas she kind of comes to appreciate the imperfect love from her her actual parents.
Yeah, coming to the realization that my parents aren't perfect, but they do love me, just in their own weird kind of ways.
Because Coraline's parents do obviously love her, but that doesn't mean that they aren't also neglectful in a lot of areas.
Mm-hmm.
They're imperfect. They're people.
Right, which I feel makes them much better than, like, because we all, I imagine, crave, like, the idealized version of things, but I feel like with the way the movie went, it made it important to kind of recognize that, we're all not perfect, and we can find a lot of comforts in the imperfect ways that everybody loves us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which I think is nice.
Like, I think it was, like, a good lesson, and, like, often, if something seems too good to be true, it is.
Yeah. You're getting everything you wanted. Why would I want to leave this place? But whenever you're getting everything you wanted, you don't realize that there may not be the best intentions.
Mm-hmm. But, speaking on, like, the idea of, like, kind of, like, idealized love and like idealized like the things that the other mother was kind of using to lure in Coraline, we see a lot of really cool like sets and settings all within like that one house. Like it's so many different worlds that she creates for Coraline that's like all within like a few like minute steps of their doorway. What was your favorite creation that the other mother made for Coraline?
That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I liked all of the three creations, but if I had to pick a favorite, I'd probably say Miss Pink Enforcible's show.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I think that the character design for Miss Spink and Forcible, like the other Spink and Forcible, were really, really cool. I really, really liked the circus theming around it. What was your favorite part of that show?
Honestly, their the speech that they had about man and the way that the world can be idealized,
Yeah.
all while flying on trapezes,
There's a lot
was
of
just really cool to me.
foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the creations, I guess, like do give Coraline little hints and warnings.
Yeah, I think the only one that I didn't necessarily see like a very open one like that was the garden. Though I think more in imagery that one was displayed because it's literally a garden completely designed to be her.
Mm-hmm. Oh, if you have a question, go ahead and write down, put the question in chat and I'll write it down and we'll get to it, okay? Thank you for redeeming.
Redeem, redeem.
But the other father does a lot of legwork though, trying to warn Coraline though. Like I feel like almost every scene we see him in, like right up to the end, he's trying to help Coraline.
Even if it's in ways that she might not necessarily notice because he has to be kind of careful about it. I noticed that too after the many rewatchings I had. Even at the start, whenever he's singing the song.
Yeah. A lot of people point out that the song is a warning.
Yeah, he's because at the end of it, our eyes are always on Coraline. He's trying to say that you are always being watched. At least that's how I felt. Like you're always being watched, and that may not necessarily be the best thing, but I'm here for you. It's essentially a song like I'm here to do what I can for you.
Yeah, he said as much as he could, I think.
And I think that's definitely portrayed a lot more as it went on. But no, for sure, I think in regards to my favorite like wonders that were given to her, it would go the circus, the Spink and Forcible circus, Cirque du Soleil kind of feel. And then it would go Mr. Bobinski's and then the garden.
I liked Mr. Bobinski's a lot. So whenever you had decided that you wanted to talk about Coraline, I did reread the novella. Mr. Bobinski was a really interesting character, just because he was sort of in the novella at least, he was sort of always scary. Like Coraline like always felt uncomfortable around him. And I think that makes sense like narratively because he's like I'm trying to think how to describe like he's very foreign even to Coraline in the other world or in her world she doesn't even know his name. So like he's very, very foreign to Coraline.
It's like meeting somebody who does things so vehemently different than you've ever seen. They just almost, it's the kind of aversion to them, not because they're a bad person or because you think that they're a bad person, but just because you don't know anything about them. And
Yeah.
everything they do is so weird to you. So like out of place. You don't know what to think. So it just, they always come off as scary.
Mm-hmm. And I think that he was like one of the first overt like clues that something was wrong, because like just everything about him, like he wasn't a perfect copy, because Coraline in the book, she knew almost nothing about him. So there was that sort of like uncanniness where like I guess it was harder to disguise with him specifically. So I think like the other mother actually kind of made herself at a detriment for copying him at all.
Mm-hmm. I think that
But
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, I really like the way that he's characterized. His scene though, like whenever she was looking for the ghost eyes, was the scariest to me. He was definitely one of the scarier ones.
Yeah. I think the Speak Enforceable one kind of edged out a little bit for me specifically, just because I don't know what it was, but the face morphing on them just kind of spooked
Yeah.
me a little
It
bit.
was like body horror. It was fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
It was really
No,
scary.
but him as like a disembodied like conductor's jacket and like top hat and everything, and the things he said and the way that he said them and the effects that they put on his voice were so, it was
Mm-hmm.
more eerie to me rather than scary, but it just like set you on edge, and I think that's what his was supposed to do.
Yeah, like the ringmasters get up and everything. Because his was like the little mice circus.
Mm-hmm.
Adjusting my posture. But you bring up the thing about his voice though, which does lead me to the next thing I wanted, or one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. You are a voice actor.
Yeah,
You have voice acted in many projects.
correct.
So whenever Henry Selick was talking about the voice acting and how they did the like the casting and the voices for the characters, doing voice acting work for stop motion is incredibly difficult because of how long the production for those projects takes. So he was saying like a lot of the time characters would have to be made before they were ever cast. So they would bring like these little painted statues of the characters up to the voice actors and work with them that way. And they would have to like come back on scenes that they had done like a year later to fix them or to retake them. I'm curious, as a voice actor, how would you prepare for a role like that?
Uh, hmm. Roles like that are difficult to kind of convey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially again with stop motion, like you said. Because stop motion, it takes hours upon days to move even the tiniest piece, especially when you're moving it to mouth movements. Those are such tiny movements that they have to create. And as a voice actor, you can look at a character that you're given and be like, what do you feel this character is like? And kind of give your initial take and do lines, and then they can, in fact, even in other mediums, they'll come back and give you like, so I like this, but can we do it more like this seems to fit the way that the scene has progressed better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in a lot of voice acting mediums, that's what happens.
Yeah. But I was just wondering, like, how would, because he was mentioning that there are a lot of things that they would do, like giving the character, like, characteristics for, like, in the way that they speak so they can come back on it again in character. Like, how would you prepare for something like that?
So a lot of the times, In most of the projects that I was ever in, we would be given the script first, and a lot of the times we had more time with the director to specifically set up. Almost, it was kind of the reverse. Like the characters were kind of made around our voice
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the times, because in most cases, if it's like a project that is new and being made, which were a lot of the things that I worked on, um it essentially is kind of worked around your voice. The art will be directed according to how you have portrayed the character with the director, and the director will be like, "Yeah, that's what I'm going for." And so you kind of morph and essentially become the character. I like doing method just because, if you can get into a character's headspace, it makes it a lot easier to portray them, because you're
Mm-hmm.
like, what are they thinking in this moment? What are they doing in this moment? How would they feel? Not how I would feel, but how would they feel? So doing a project like this where the characters were designed first and also changes had to be made years later because of the way that kind of things were directed, and like lines had to be slightly redone, because sometimes it could have been as little as an inflection that they wanted changed to portray exactly what they needed,
Mm-hmm.
while it worked in the time to have as like a placeholder, because that's what they'll do a lot of times. They'll put your voice down as a placeholder,
Mm-hmm.
so that way they can model the movement of the mouth and stuff like that. And then, if the lines were perfect for what they needed, then they'll go with those. But if they weren't, they will sometimes many, many years after you've done all of your lines and put everything down and are done, they call you back like, "Hey, kind of need this to be changed because it doesn't necessarily fit the scene anymore."
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's a very interesting medium, especially with the stop motion, because again, stop motion is hard to do right.
Mm-hmm. So how do you get back into character, I suppose, like years later?
I typically try to draw on the feelings that I had for the character. I'll go back and look at old things and kind of feel out how I felt as the character back then. Um, because I typically, whenever I did voice acting, and still do, but just not as often now, um, that's kind of what I would do. I would basically go back and review old takes, because I like to keep those things, because every project I've ever been in, it's memories. It's good memories. I have always had fun on the projects that I've ever been. Some of them were a slog, some of them were work, but that didn't make them bad. It just, at the time, I sometimes I'll even draw upon that, like the feeling of just like, "Ooh, I remember this," and use that if, like, say it's a scene where the character is supposed to be exasperated or supposed to be this, that, or the other. So I feel like the easiest way, at least for me, is to go back and review all the things that I did to get back into that character's headspace.
Do you ever feel like unintentionally the feeling of like maybe your exasperated feelings with the production itself has ever like affected the voice of the character? Like even if it wasn't intended? Like the way
I've
the character talks, I suppose.
I think there were a few times where that happened, though they were minute and didn't happen often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and more often than not, I would try to draw on the fact of like, is the character exasperated? Because if so, boy, howdy, can I do that?
Mm-hmm.
um, but there were times where I could hear it, and it would be in the takes, and that would mostly sit with me and the director. They would never see the light of day, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
But there are subtle moments, I think, looking back at some of the things that I had worked on, where I maybe might be the only person who notices, but I'll just look on it and see it and remember I was like, oh, it was so hard to get this line correct. I can hear it. I can hear it. Nobody else can. but I can hear it in my howl.
Yeah, you've been on quite a few projects, and you've done a lot of different types of roles as well. I remember you were telling me at one point you had done animal noises.
Yes. So whenever I was in pauper college,
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot of things they would do is they would put you in like roles. They're basically uncredited roles, but you still get paid. It's just uncredited because you're mostly foley or background noises. Um, grunts, growls, other assorted noises, I used to call it. Um, where they would find people who are particularly good at it if they didn't want to use like a stock sound of like go out, find a stock sound or use actual animals. If they just wanted to take a voice actor who can do that, pay them at an uncredited rate and have them do it, they would do that.
What kind of I'm just curious now. What kind of animals did you do typically? What was your expertise?
Typically I could do bear sounds, I could do wolves. um Howls were a big one that I used to do pretty well.
Can you do a howl?
I surely can. Hold on.
Yay,
Oh,
we're getting a howl, guys.
So hard to imagine being a wolf. So hard.
That was good. I liked that. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me. You fucking poor Roy right now is in his room. Because I had asked, like, hey, can you ask Roy to be a little quieter, maybe, please? I can hear him playing games. And he's just fucking hearing you through the wall.
Just howling away, as I often do. The one thing that they they looked for the most was dynamic sounds like that. They didn't want just like a static, just because they can usually get that online. You can just find that. But if they wanted something specific to sound like that, to me felt like a wolf that is sad.
Sad.
Almost a sad howl.
Hmm.
Because I'm pretty good at like changing my voice as I'm doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there was a little bit of variety to it.
Mm-hmm. And often and not, you have to kind of do that in a timed manner. So it's like 3 seconds of this and try to shift into like this screeching like howl extra piece and then go back.
Excuse me, I need a 3-second howl and I need it... Like, that sounds like really difficult. I don't know if I'd be able to do that. I feel like I'd get psyched out. So can I get a 3-second clip of a howl taking a shit in the woods? That's awful.
I've found that a lot of certain growls were easier to do, though there were some that I could only do at specific times. Like, it was weird. I had to build it up. There's this weird thing that I would do where I would just build up all the bellowing in like my chest and then work it into my throat, and then it would start with just a breathing out, just and then it would just get deeper and deeper, and then I'd finally be able to do it.
Okay, we're getting off topic. I just wanted to hear the wolf sound. Still on the topic of voice acting though, there are many characters. There are a lot of the objects have voices too, like the toys in Coraline's room or the flowers make noises. If you could pick any role in Coraline to do, let's say next year they're doing a Coraline remake.
Mm-hmm.
They would never. But let's say that they are. What role would you want?
So just like as like a general like a background, like
Oh, it could be anything. It could be like one of the characters. It could be a back, like anything, like any character or background creature. Well, who would you want?
I think the most fun would definitely be the cat.
The cat. The cat's
I
a good
love him.
one. Mm-hmm. The cat is in the
Mystical,
novel.
mysterious. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of differences between the movie and the novella. Like, a lot of characters that were in the movie weren't in the novella. The cat is... Like, the cat's a really big part of the novel, though. Kind of like the guiding force that's helping Coraline through the strange world.
Is it bigger in the novel or just as prevalent?
So, a lot of... a lot of what Coraline learns about the world does come from the cat. But I wouldn't say that he has a bigger role in the novella. However, in the novella, YB does not exist. YB's not there, so the cat does kind of like fill the role that YB had. As like being like the breaching, like similarity between the real world and the other world. Because in the movie, YB kind of served as that function because he gave her the doll. But in the novel, the doll doesn't exist either.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was really interesting, because the doll is like one of the more iconic parts of the movie, in my opinion. Like, a lot of people think of the doll when they think of Coraline, but in the novel, like, the doll wasn't really a thing. Like, the other mother's eyes were mostly the rats.
Mm-hmm. I suppose that's a difference between mediums that kind of was necessary. I think it just kind of played a little bit more into childhood wonderment. And like having a doll specifically for me kind of feel.
It made Coraline feel special, which was something that she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I am curious though, in regards to like YB and the doll and everything, my personal opinion is that it was probably one of those changes that was made because Rory and I had touched on this a little bit, like during when we talked about the thing, where there are some things that are more interesting to read than they are to watch. And I think a lot of like the slow like understanding of Coraline's connection to the other world was more interesting to read, but would have probably taken too long in the movie. And I feel like YB kind of like fills that need for there to be like a quick reason for Coraline to be connected to the other world.
Right, it fills in the gap to fit the screen time without it being kind of too quick, or like it's a quick fix but not a quick like it wasn't overly fast in the movie. It fit for a visual medium rather than a reading medium.
Yeah, because from like a movie standpoint, the final scene with YB and Coraline is more interesting than the final scene in the novel, where she so in the novel, the way Coraline gets rid of the hand and the key is that she tricks it by setting up a trap for it to fall into the well. That's really clever, and she's a really smart kid for figuring something like that out, and that is accredited very well in the novel, but it's not interesting to watch in a movie format.
Not only that, I feel like I suppose in the medium of the way that the show or the movie portrayed it, I would be losing my shit too much to be clever in that situation as a child. Even now, honestly.
Yeah.
So I feel like their ragtag group doing that together, barely skirting by and defeating this evil needle hand, kind of felt more realistic, I suppose, to me, just in that sense.
Yeah, and I think that YB also, like, he also kind of filled this need for... Because I think that when you're reading something, there's a lot of nuance that you have to take into consideration, where, like, maybe children watching the movie wouldn't have really understood that the other mother was evil. just because, or like they wouldn't have really understood like the stakes of it, I suppose. But YB and the other YB do kind of feel the need for that to understand, like, oh, this bitch is crazy.
Yeah. She is purely evil. I mean, and it makes sense considering what she technically is in folklore.
Yeah, she's a witch. The beldam.
Yeah, I believe that those are a specific type of witch. They're spider-like and typically just eat children.
I believe beldam is also used to refer to just ugly old woman.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just also a word for that.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah.
Mm. But yeah, I think that YB and the other YB were like a good way to kind of like get like viewers on board pretty quickly with what was going on. Because it would be really easy, I suppose, for like a younger child to kind of overlook some of the nuances of the way the other mother behaves. However, sewing a kid's mouth shut so he doesn't talk and annoy your daughter is a little out there.
Yeah.
That one's a little harder to justify.
Especially whenever she came in with the, I figured you'd like him better if he didn't talk. I was like, especially whenever I first watched it, I was like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah, like, whoa. Coraline is like weirdly cool with it, which was really funny.
I think because she took it in the most childlike way, like, oh, this one doesn't talk, he doesn't say silly things. Nice, I like it.
Yeah, there is like this like perception that Coraline has where like she understands that the world was made by the other mother, but I don't think she understood at that point that the people in it could be hurt by the other mother.
Yeah, she thought that like they were, if she understood it, at least enough that they were made for her to have this idealized world, that they can't be harmed. They were made to be this way.
Yeah, it's how it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. This is how this world is, so they're fine with that.
Yeah.
Probably one of the reasons why she didn't notice most of the like things that people were trying to do to warn her.
Mm-hmm. It's very easily overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Because they, of course, had to be careful, because one wrong step and they're getting fixed or they're getting changed or something is happening to them. So they can't really be out loud and crazy with it.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like, talking a little bit more about the character specifically, though. The Coraline did win an Annie Award for Best Character Design. In 2010, they won that award. And a lot of work was put into the characters and how they looked and like the clothing they wore. I was doing whenever I was looking at stuff, a woman named Thea Crone. She like was in charge of like hand knitting some of the knitwear that the characters wore, because all of like the sweaters and stuff they were wearing was handmade. And it would take like 6 weeks to 6 months for some garments for them to be made using like these knitting needles that were like as thin as hair. Kind of like with that in mind and all the work that went into the character design, who had your favorite design? So not necessarily like just like performance or like the world or the setting that they were in, just like who did you like the way they looked the most, like design wise?
Oh, the other mother. I liked every single thing she was wearing at any given time.
I thought that the other mother's design was really interesting because the novel set in England, because it does reference Coraline is living close to London, and that is where Neil Gaiman was living while he was like writing it, or at least part of it before he stopped working on it for a bit. The other mother is very Americana. Like, she's very 1950s, like, housewife, like, the red lipstick, the red nails, the polka dots, like, she's very Americana.
Mm-hmm. One of the really interesting things I liked about her design and her clothing is that it slowly, as Coraline watched and was a part of more of the wonders, changed. You could start to see the more spider-like design on the clothing she wore on her back and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. You would notice more moving parts and more pieces of fabric that shift like she had a thorax of a spider, which I
Yeah,
thought was interesting symbolism.
yeah, the peplum, like on the like it was all really, really well done. It was a beautiful character design, like and so like all the way through to like the grand reveal of like the beldam, where she was like this
Hmm.
spindly, like spider-like creature. Like it's just beautiful character.
Hmm. And even in like the abject, I suppose, like horror of her design once she changed, I still thought it was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Just a cool design. Though I'd have to say my favorite piece of clothing was the one that Coraline wore at the end with the boots and the star like sweater.
Yeah, the star sweater was like that's like probably one of the most memorable like costume pieces to me.
Hmm.
Like whenever I think about Coraline, I think about her wearing that.
Hmm. I think about that one, and then of course her stompers and rain jacket.
Yeah. I like all of the character design was really good though. Like the costumes from Miss Pink and Forcible, like they were really simple, but they were very like they're reminiscent of like the old style swimsuits and like the stripy like the one pieces that people would wear. And like there was a lot of thought and care put into everybody.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everybody got attention to detail. The other father and her regular father definitely just fit that like motif of just being a dad. Like they just dad. It's
Yeah.
no easier way of describing it.
Something a difference between the book and the movie though that I thought was really interesting was that the mother like Coraline's real mother is has a lot of a sharper attitude towards Coraline than she did in the book. Like she's a lot more dismissive and like she wasn't really like that in the novel. She was more neglectful, I suppose. She was more like forgetful and kind of like she ignored Coraline a lot, but she wasn't kind of outright like leave me alone, stop pestering me. Like that was a really interesting difference because the dad was actually more like that in the book. So I thought it was interesting that they went the direction of like almost making the dad feel a little bit more like I don't want to say redeemable because he's not a villain, but like a little bit more likable, I suppose.
Hmm. They essentially kind of flipped them.
Yeah, but even in the novel, really, Coraline's mother wasn't goofy. The dad's silly, so it's almost like you kind of excuse a lot of his like neglectful behaviors of Coraline because he's silly, because he's funny.
Because
Mm,
hee hee ha ha. Yeah. Um, the way that I took from that, though, it might be an interesting take. Probably not, though. But just seeing the way that, like, in the ways that the mother was kind of like snapping at her. How to explain? It felt more real than I suppose the way that you were kind of describing in the book.
mm-hmm.
Because I even whenever I was younger and first watched the movie, I'm empathetic. I like to really look at the situation as a whole, and I'm thinking like I suppose I think of it more nowadays too, because they just moved. She's trying to get all this work done so that they have money to do this, that, or the other. And while obviously that is no reason to neglect your child or be angry with them because they're not doing anything purposeful, they're not doing anything. However, I can sort of see why or where that comes from. It's like, let me work. I need to do
Yeah.
this. You're preventing me from doing this. Stop it. And that came across with the dad too, because he's just like, go count windows, count doors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we're almost like more inclined, I suppose, to feel sympathetic for the dad than we are the mom, which I thought was interesting
Yeah.
choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like dad's just like it's like, oh, dad's in his office doing his best. It's like almost, I feel like the movie kind of harkens to this a lot, where it is almost like Coraline does kind of crave the like the structure of a nuclear family, where she does show a bit of resentment that her mother doesn't cook. She shows a bit of resentment that her mother's not more like active and present. She doesn't want her dad to be the one to cook. She doesn't like the way her dad cooks. And then whenever she goes into the other world, this idealized version of her family is her mother cooks and she's loving and doting and her dad works out in the garden. And he's like this funny, silly guy who does music. And like her almost like idealized, I suppose, view of her parents is one where her mother is like this matron of the house that does the housework, and her father, I suppose, takes on a much more leisurely role in the house, which I thought was really interesting. Because Coraline is very, like, adamant of her perception of herself that she's independent and that she's an explorer and that she's special, but she wants that. She almost resents her family for not falling into that nuclear dynamic.
Mm-hmm. I suppose that probably comes because she wants to be the one who is like, I am different, I am special, I do this and I do that, and I want my family to be. I suppose she doesn't want to be boring, but she wants her family to be like that, like nuclear family, very boring, everybody's loving and everything just goes right kind of thing.
Like, she almost does kind of, like, want... She's not getting... She's not getting the attention and like the like nurturing environment that she needs, so she does kind of want her family to have a dynamic where she can stand out.
Mm-hmm. Whereas, in her current family dynamic, her dad's a little weird, her mom is a little weird in the way that they do things. Their whole household is against the perception that she has that it should be. So she can't really get the time or the attention to feel special.
Yeah. And I feel like that does kind of interestingly like harken back to like the odd like almost like Americanization that Coraline went through during the production of the film, because again, like the mother is very Americana. So it is like, I feel like almost like unintentionally maybe so, like kind of harkening on like the experiences of the like, I suppose, the more Americanized crew that would like worked on it, where it was like they're kind of like almost like uh kind of imprinting their kind of idea of like, well, what would a child imagine a perfect family to be?
Right. Yeah. They stepped more into their own shoes and portrayed that in the film rather than like what necessarily the book wrote about. Because you said that the director had pretty much written it for his daughter.
Yeah, but Neil Gaiman
So,
himself, they, again, like the book itself is set in England, like that's where Neil Gaiman was living whenever he started it. So it was just interesting to see those differences. However, like those dynamics where Coraline wants that like family structure are present in the book as well, because that's not necessarily like that's not solely an American standard.
no, but pushing the more nuclear family kind of feel to it might have been more of the like Americana feel to it.
Yeah, it's just, it was, I guess it was like harkened a little bit more to and like emphasized a bit more by the character design choices that were made, because even like the dad is like very Americana, and like the robe and the pipe and like this his slippers roaming around the house with his newspaper.
My bunny slippers are blue.
Orange, my monkey slippers are blue.
Yeah, monkey slippers. I always say bunny.
Give me some of that magic mud you were talking about, because I got a writer's rash right on my
That hand gesture kills me every time when he does that. It's just the simplest of movements.
Oh, my hands.
Yeah.
But again, this is that like characterization of him being silly, him being goofy.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, this is not necessarily like a grievance of mine with the film or anything like that. It is just something I've noticed.
Right.
Something I thought was interesting.
I think too that maybe the roles were switched purely because I guess in a lot of mediums it's harder to make the dad like mean,
Mm-hmm.
just because like where's the line of too mean or too scary and stuff like that, whereas with a mom maybe it's just more sassy and just like, ugh, my child. It could just be me just like thinking too much on it, but I don't know.
No, I don't think that's us thinking too much. Single was mentioning something about that in the chat earlier. I saw that it is like a little bit more difficult, and I almost like feel like a little bit. It's difficult to do well, I suppose, but it is almost like more expected that the dad is harsh just based on like the standard of like media that we have growing up. Like the mom is sassy, the dad's an asshole. That is just kind of like the dynamic that we're used to.
Big, tough, gruff. Why weren't you a son? Why aren't you playing football? Blah, 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 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think that it was good that they did avoid that with the dad. Because it can be a little easy, I suppose, to dehumanize parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that giving the dad that type of personality wasn't a bad decision. And it does, like, kind of draw to the dichotomy between the, like, Coraline's real mother and her other mother, that her real mother is a little bit colder. Kind of emphasizing those differences again for a younger audience that might not understand nuance as well.
Yeah. Exaggerating the nuances a little bit more so that younger audiences can kind of understand
Mm-hmm.
in a meaningful way that doesn't just, like, take you completely out of it, but also helps you to recognize that this is what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Because we do see, as the movie goes on, closer to the middle, the mom tries to be more sympathetic. It showed to me, at least, that she was trying and that she was just exasperated. Not that she didn't love her child. She was just exasperated and things were happening all at once. And she didn't have the time when she really needed to have the time because Coraline needed the attention. It wasn't necessarily a want. It was something that she kind of needed.
Yeah, and I think that the movie does a good job of, like, portraying the fact that Coraline's not in the wrong for being upset at her parents.
No.
That's not where the wrong in, like, the decisions that she makes comes in. Because she has every right to be upset at her parents, because it's mentioned multiple times, and it's, like, there are multiple hints to the fact that her parents are really bad at keeping commitments to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the scenes where her mother does take, like, that softer kind of approach with her were very necessary to show that, like, it's not that Coraline is not receiving any attention from her parents, it's that it's infrequent, that it's not the type of attention that she needs, and that they're kind of used to doing, like, band-aid solutions with her by promising things will be better and then they don't.
Yeah, speaking of that, I really liked the scene where the mother was saying that she was going to go grocery shopping and she was trying to be like, I'll give you this, that, and then Coraline was having none of it. And I thought that was a really good nuanced scene because it could have just as easily been Coraline getting excited for something that's more of the idealistic thing, but her realizing that this is just going to fix it for the moment and nothing's going to change.
Yeah, and I think that the scene where I'm trying to like the scene where that entire scene where she's like going shopping with her mom and like getting her school clothes and like oh, we need to go grocery shopping. I think that that was a really good example of Coraline's, I suppose, like, desire for her own identity, because she like very actively resented the idea of a uniform.
Yeah, especially the kind of uniform that it was. It was gray, it was dull, it was boring, everything she doesn't want to be. So she just wanted one thing to kind of pop to make herself be her.
And there was sort of that, like, very, like, the parental, like, like, denial of that. Of, like, no, you can't have that. And there's not a reason given as to why she can't. It's just, no, you can't have it. And Coraline's trying to explain that, like, that I want it for this reason, but that's not good enough. Or it doesn't matter because she's not being listened to.
Yeah, I think the more we're talking about it, a lot I'm thinking like the parents, while not trying to neglect her, are essentially living in their own world and thinking about their own problems with what's going on. They've just moved, they need to get all these things done. They're not thinking about the fact that Coraline has her own problems too with moving here. She's away from everybody she knows. She's going to a new place. And you're not giving her any chance to be an individual in any way. So it seems more like they just wasn't neglect in like I'm actively neglecting you. It's just they didn't realize or even put as much thought as they probably should have into, well, how does Coraline feel about this whole situation rather than just their
Mm-hmm.
own.
Yeah, I think that the decision to have Coraline be set during a move, or in the process of the move, was very clever. Because that is a really good time to show when children can feel displaced. Because when you're a child and you're going through a move like that, you have literally no decision-making power.
Yeah,
You don't get to
none.
decide where you live, you don't get to decide who your friends are, like, everything starts over, and you really just kind of have to watch it happen.
Yeah, as a person who was moved around a lot when I was younger, as a wee pup, I resonate with that quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Yeah, I did a lot of moving and when I was younger as well. And it is like it can feel easy to feel ignored and to feel like
Hmm.
very polarized by like what you want and what your family needs.
Hmm. Because also too, I think as a child, at least in some circumstances, I give my parents some credit because when I was that young, I didn't necessarily think about the stuff they were thinking about, but also too, the proxy of that is they didn't give any thought to the things that I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that dichotomy.
Yeah, it
That's
can be.
interesting.
Yeah, it can be Single mentioned in chat. Like it was definitely them prioritizing her needs. She needs new clothes. It doesn't matter that she wants these gloves. The want is not as important right now as the need for a school uniform.
Hmm.
She needs food. It doesn't matter who cooks it though. It doesn't necessarily matter that she wants to cook it because mom needs to work.
Hmm.
So, in a lot of ways, like, you view the movie very differently as like an adult versus watching it as a child. And I think that plays to the film's credit a lot because it has a lot of rewatchability. And it is a movie that adults can enjoy with their children.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that my dad had said. He liked that movie quite a bit. He thought it was
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool. He liked it for different aspects, but he liked it, and it's one of those things where yeah, you could. It's an enjoyment for all ages. It's for this demographic, but adults can still watch it and take it for what it is as just a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Though he was tired of it after we got the DVD and watched it a million times.
As adults often do whenever you've watched a movie for 5 million times. I
Yep.
definitely have my fair share of movies that I ran into the ground.
Oh, I do too.
But let's see. Mm. Out of so this is like an interesting tidbit that I learned whenever I was going through it. When so Terry Hatcher, the other mother and the mother, she was talking with Neil Gaiman about the movie, and the question came up of where the button eyes comes from. Like, why button eyes? And he doesn't know. He doesn't remember why. And I thought that was really interesting. I was wondering, did you have any opinions, I suppose, on, like, what, like, if the button eyes mean anything to you?
Kind of, though I don't necessarily know if it connects to buttons. Just it more connects to like dolls and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because going into that other world, it was just that, her idealized world. And so I felt like the buttons kind of portrayed like the phrase cute as a button
Mm-hmm.
is where I'm going with. Like, I don't think it necessarily connects, but like in my mind, I was like, everything is picture perfect. Everything is cute as a button. It's exactly, everything's all sewed and seamed up perfectly. The world is an ideal world for a child. Everything is wonderment and nothing goes wrong, and everybody is happy and perfect and happy and healthy and everything.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that as well. I remember that there was a line in the book where it is like the other mother doing the thing again where she says, "I love you. You know I love you, right?" And Coraline nods. She goes, "Yes, I know." Because the other mother does love Coraline, but the other mother loves Coraline like you love an object, not like you love a child. So I do think that, like, kind of objectification that the buttons provide could be, like, a bit of the symbolism there. And then there's also, like, the obvious kind of, like, the metaphor of blindness that would be caused by that.
Blind eye to all the things that are actually going wrong, all the signs.
Mm-hmm. And, like,
Of this
Coraline,
world
like,
that seems
rejecting that
perfect.
blindness.
Just like the cat says, you probably think that this world is a dream come true, but you're wrong.
Yeah, I love the cat.
I love the cat. Keith David's voice is just perfect. In any role he's in, really.
Mm-mm-mm. Okay. Well, that is all of the questions that I had. So I am going to go back to that question that Single asked. Did you see the spot on that speech in how it's actually from Macbeth and they purposely leave out the last line? So Single is referring to the play that Miss Spink and Forcible are reciting in the in like the play that they did for Coraline. Let me see if I can
Right.
pull what exactly they say. So, also, while I'm looking that up, I do want to say that I was very ecstatic when I found out years later that Miss Spink and Forcible are in fact gay.
As it should be. Yeah, just the realization that, why are these two ladies acting like an old married couple? Because they are.
Yep. Oh, Ferris also has a question, so please write down your question and we'll get to it as well. Okay, so the full quote. "What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragons of animals. But they don't say, and yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? No man's delights, not me."
Yeah. So just no, because I knew most of that because I had I'd seen where that was from.
Mm-hmm.
Just it puts into perspective all the stuff, all the showing of like like YB turning into dust, and how you see this perfect world, how everything is great, but it's not. In actuality, what is it really?
Yeah, they're purposely leaving out the bit where the quote is just actually about the world, like the wonders of the world being an illusion.
You can see all these wondrous things, but what are they really?
Which is a fantastic bit of foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Like there's so much foreshadowing in like the book and the movie, which is like one of the reasons that that the essay I'd referenced earlier, the one that was like categorizing Coraline as gothic literature, why it is categorized is that because it hits like so many of the gothic tropes where it's like the young girl in this like kind of isolated like strange place where it's like the dichotomy of like the real world and the fantasy world, and like these strange almost like weird characters that foreshadow like the dangers that she's going to go through, all the way down to the talking cat giving her warnings and wisdom. It's very gothic.
Yeah, this mystical being that you thought was just a regular cat is giving you wisdom.
Let's see. The question from Ferris. If you've read the book but never seen the movie, is it worth going back and watching it? Very much so.
Absolutely.
In my opinion.
Absolutely.
Because again, they are two pretty, like, they are the same story essentially, but they have a lot of differences, and there are things to enjoy about both mediums. Like I said, there are things that are interesting to read, and there are some things that are interesting to read aren't interesting to watch. So the choices they made to make it interesting to watch were very, very smart. The book is a little darker than the movie, though. There's this one scene in the book that sticks out to me. Really, really. Like, I hadn't read this book in years until I reread it recently for this. But the one scene in it that stuck out to me was there was an area of the house that we didn't explore, the cellar. And the cellar is fucked up. Basically, during the game where Coraline has to go and find the souls of the children, she goes into the cellar, and that's where the other mother is keeping the other father. And he's like this fucking gross, like, amalgamation of, like, doughy flesh and eyes. Or not eyes, but, like, his button eyes that, like, are falling off and shit. And, like, little spindly arms. And he fucking attacks her in there. So I think that it was a smart decision to change the encounter with the father to happen in the garden, because that was fucked up.
Yeah, I liked the garden. He's just like, sorry, don't wanna hurt you.
Yeah, that attitude is reflected in the book as well. But instead of, like, it being in the whimsical pretty garden, it's just in this dank fucking dark cellar being lit up by a single light bulb while this amalgamation of a man attacks you saying he doesn't want to. That's fucked up.
That would be great to be in, like, a Coraline video game.
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
That stuck with me years later. Yeah, he's very slug-like. Yeah, it's gross.
There's just one exit.
Yeah.
And a cellar with this gross amalgamation that you can barely see. Shouting things that are opposed to what it's doing is spooky.
It's fucked up. Super fucked up. And, like, so the blindness that happened in Coraline, like the penultimate scene with the other mother, they use that with the other father instead, except it's, like, so much fucking weirder because he's blind and you're trying not to get attacked by a slug man in a dark cellar. While you're trying to, like, scramble your way up the stairs without him hearing you. This was written for a 4-year-old, by the way.
Yeah. I still love how angry the cat was up until the end when she apologized for just yucking him.
He fucking pitched you through me.
Like, I couldn't think of nothing. And he's like, you couldn't muster a sorry about this. Jeez.
She does chuck him in the book at the other mother at the end as well.
Good.
He does get chucked.
I mean, with all the shadowing of she hates cats. It's like, she hates you. Sorry.
Attack! Kill her!
Get her.
Get her ass!
No, yeah, the scariest scene though in the movie for me was definitely the descent on the spider web.
Oh my god. So like I'm not as afraid of spiders as I used to be, but I used to be very, very scared of spiders. Being a child and watching the other motherfucking descent from the sky like that fucked me up.
Just screeching like a banshee, just and in that part in 3D, it made it seem like she was
Mm.
falling out of the screen, and that was worse.
Oh my god. I would have pissed myself
because
and died.
because it's from the perspective of like a down looking up view. So when you're sitting in your seat and you just see her just she's falling, and you just see her come out of the screen, you're like, why would you do that to me?
Yeah, no, that sucks. That sucks. That sucks a lot, actually.
I'm a child.
Please. God. There's so much to talk about this movie, though. Like, it's such a good movie. And I think it is, like, a really good introduction for horror.
Mm-hmm. It has scary and like suspenseful themes, but it's not so much that like you're just gonna be like frightened out of your pants.
Mm-hmm.
Unless of course you have a specific thing that you are extremely afraid of that is in the movie, like spiders. And in which case, you know, spooky. Spooky.
I think the spider
One of the
theming was a really oh, go ahead.
Oh no. You can go because mine's sort of a question that we might talk about.
Okay. I think that the spider theming was a really clever reference to the novel, because the novel does mention that Coraline is afraid of spiders.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
What were you saying, though?
Just it was one thing that we touched on slightly, but not as about like the final showdown, the search and find.
Okay.
For all the eyes of the children, just some of the like cracked symbolism and realizing the things about the world. I really liked the dialogues that came from the other father, Mr. Bobinski, and from not necessarily said, but like implied from YB.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we watched it, we talked about this a little bit. And you were right. I remembered wrong about Bobinski's thing, because I had thought that there was a little bit more foreshadowing of him kind of being sympathetic, when in reality it was more of it wasn't necessarily that he wanted to harm her, but like I feel like his perception of what he wasn't even the recreation anymore. He didn't understand why she would want to leave a perfect world.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of his lines and the voice acting stuck with me so much, because I just loved that scene, how eerie it felt, how much dread was built up just by him saying not even consequential or menacing things.
Mm-hmm. That scene did not change much.
That was in the book?
Yeah, that scene didn't change much. Like him like not really like understanding, like being like, well, why would you leave? And being in like the whole like you're just a bad cop, and he's like not even that anymore. Because I think it was like a thing like the other mother just really didn't know anything about Bobinski. Coraline didn't interact with him nearly as much as she did Spink and Forcible.
She didn't have much to draw on.
Mm-hmm.
Like Coraline had the image that she saw whenever she entered Spink and Forcible's room, of them as trapeze artists. So she had a good idea of what they looked like when they were younger and kind of how they acted, and that could be idealized. But I mean, in reality, she saw nothing of Mr. Bobinski except that he was odd.
Yeah. He was a weird guy in the attic with a Russian accent and had mice that he said were in a circus.
But just something about like but why would you want to leave? We can laugh together and play together and have so much fun. And she's just like, of course you wouldn't understand. And it's like, you don't understand, do you? And he's like, I don't. Why?
I don't
And
get
it's just,
it.
of course you wouldn't, because you're just an idealized version of a person that I hardly know. And he's like, well, not even that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Something
kind of
I...
funny to me.
Go
It
ahead.
was just kind of funny to me that that was the hardest part of the entire trek that she had. Not being swung at by a grasshopper blade or grabbed by toffee like hands or grabbed by snapping dragons, but mice or rats just outsmarting her.
Yeah. I think that, like, something... I guess it's, like, a personal theory of mine. Like, interesting about the world itself. Because obviously Coraline knows very little about it. And the cat doesn't really know much about it either. But he knows more than Coraline. And something that they had discussed, and this scene does happen in the movie, the walk around the world scene, where they're going on that long walk and she ends up right back at the house because she didn't bother to make anything that Coraline wouldn't be interested in. There is a little bit more detail that's given about that area in the book, though, where Coraline said, did she make this place? And the cat says, well, make, found, what's the difference? And then there's also a lot of implication that the tunnel to the other world is in and of itself its own creature and its own organism. I almost wonder if I guess, like, a personal theory of mine is that the other mother is like, the Beldam is like this parasitic creature living in whatever the other world is. And maybe the other world was at one point intended to be a much happier place.
Yeah, maybe it was just a place that existed outside of the reality in that house, like something created it. Because I remember me kind of like speculating that the walkway to the other world was kind of like, it's a little gross, but it's kind of like walking through the guts of another beast of some kind, an entity.
It's really interesting that you caught that, because in the book that's all but confirmed. On her last walk out of the other world, it is mentioned that the walls feel like the inside of a creature's mouth, and that Coraline is, like, certain that whatever she's walking through is something that knows that she's there.
Mhm. And of course, in that medium where they don't want to necessarily frighten children, of course, they weren't going to describe that in visual form. But
Mm-hmm. So I do almost wonder, because a lot of the things that the other mother creates, they either, like, they're always bad copies of something else, or they're always a copy of something else. And the
mhm.
other father does, like, confirm that they're not always... Well, the other father and YB always confirm that, like, they don't always necessarily want to hurt Coraline or the children. So I wonder if it was meant to be something else at one point.
Yeah, maybe designed by an otherworldly creature to be a safe haven almost. That was kind of hijacked by this parasitic witch-like creature.
Mm-hmm. Or, like, going on the other side of it, the other mother, like, she does sound scared at the end of the movie. And whether that is, like, from
Mhm.
the fear of, like, self-preservation or something else.
Yeah, maybe she does need to, because consuming the child is how she gets power. Maybe she needs enough to keep her hold on this reality.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Which is
It's
why she
interesting.
doesn't make things that she doesn't need.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I do wish we could find out a bit more, I suppose, about the nature of the other mother and why she's there, as well as like what kind of creature exactly is like the tunnel? Like, is the tunnel part of a bigger creature? Is it its own entity itself? There's a lot that we don't know. And I think that is part of like the frightening bit about it is like it is like kind of a purposeful decision for us not to know because that's scary. Coraline will probably never have closure in knowing exactly what happened or why it was happening.
Yeah, because as far as she's concerned, she's not going back.
Yeah, why would you go back?
And now that she's removed the key, she can't.
She's removed the key, and the only reasons to go back are gone. Like the ghost children, she saved them. They're gone.
Mm-hmm. Their souls have been saved. I always remember that one scene where that you're in terrible danger, girl.
Yeah.
Because I remember that. I remember that in the trailer. I thought that would come in the movie way earlier than it did.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a dream sequence that she would have like midway through. This world is great, and then just like getting this odd dream where they're like, "You're in danger." And then things start happening. That was my initial thought, just from seeing the trailer, because that was in the trailer, and it was a big thing that I it always stood out to me. And I always wondered if, because does it ever in the book specify more on the cat? Like, has that cat been around the whole time? Is the cat the entity?
It doesn't.
I doubt it.
It doesn't really say where the cat's from or anything. It just says that the cat has been like the cat knows ways around the other world that even the other mother is not aware of. That is something that he says, that he knows places that she doesn't, and that's why she has a hard time keeping him out.
Which kind of made me think, like, is he the other entity? Is he connected to it somehow in that way? That would be interesting.
He does imply that all cats have similar capabilities. He doesn't imply it to be a thing that is specific to him.
Maybe all cats are magical beings. That's how I feel.
Because Coraline's like, cats don't talk, and he's just like, well, aren't you the fucking expert? Smartass.
No, you just don't listen.
Because she was also like, well, what's your name? And he was like, don't have one. Cats are above that. Don't need one. Fuck off. Don't you think you know everything?
How very cat.
No, he's an asshole.
Love it.
But
because that was always something that I sort of thought of. I was just like, how long has this cat really been around?
He is afraid of the other mother, though. And there are, like, in the novel itself, there are things happening that he's not aware of. Because there's a bit where, whenever the world is collapsing, and kind of going into that grayscale, where the world is, like, the mother's, like, taking things away, or running out of power, there is, like, a moment where he's freaking out because the exits and entrances that he knew about that the mother didn't disappeared, which essentially trapped him there as well.
He's like, crap, my back doors, they've gone.
So I don't think that he is necessarily powerful or more powerful or on par with the other mother in any way, but he's a special little guy.
All else fails. Honestly, he's just a special little guy.
He's a special little guy with special little powers.
I do special little things.
Rub belly.
That is acceptable.
I think he's cute as button.
He surely is. I always like that ending scene. He's just mad, 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 and she's just like, "It was all I could think of." And he's like,
Bitch, I would be too. The fuck?
and then he just sighs, and she picks him up, and he's like, "All right, fine. This is acceptable, I suppose."
This is fine, I guess. Yeah. But did you have anything else that you wanted to touch on?
Most of my things were honestly just the voice work and foreshadowing in the things people said was just so good. I loved the way that voices would change, and even like against like the obvious visual changes that we would see that Coraline didn't necessarily notice because we're the watchers. We're supposed to be able to see these things and try to connect the dots if we're able to.
Mm-hmm.
But just the subtle things in voice acting was just in this movie. It was just a class act movie, honestly.
No, it is. It's a very good movie. It's a very good film.
From start to finish, it had a clear goal. None of the transformations like of their characters throughout it seemed forced or odd to me.
Mm-hmm.
It always felt kind of like natural progression.
Yep,
Like,
I agree.
especially at the end, where the parents were just like, "What are you talking about?" Because they didn't experience exactly, like, it was all just a vague memory, or it didn't exist to them in their minds.
Mm-hmm.
But they noticed that their daughter was extremely scared, and so the next scene is them kind of actually comforting her. They're like, "Oh, what is going on? I feel like we need to step up a little bit."
Yeah. And if you do notice, because there are like things going on with the parents in the background, where it's like they're obviously getting ready for some very important work thing with their writing. Like pitching something or like doing like some writing work that they need to go well, because that's what the dad is doing in that one scene right before they go shopping. When they get the good news about that, their attention is more on Coraline because they have the time again.
Mm-hmm.
Which as an adult you pick up, but as a kid you're like, well, what the fuck? They're ignoring her.
Yeah, they were ignoring it this whole time. Yeah, and as an adult, you understand. Oh, again, we as kids didn't necessarily notice they're going through their own stuff. It's not, again, it's not an excuse. It's just a reasoning behind. You can understand the reasoning behind why they were being so distant. They're like, we just need to get this done so we can actually just go about and do things with our child. We had to move to this new place. We got to do this, that, the other. So yeah, that's something as an adult we notice, but definitely watching it first time, I was just like, what the fuck? They're
What the fuck?
Stinkers. A lot of them.
These guys suck.
They smell bad.
Hey, that guy stinks!
Yeah.
Yeah, but if there is, I doubt this, but like if anyone watching has not seen Coraline, it highly, highly recommend it. It is a movie to be enjoyed by all ages.
Yeah, so Ferris, like you were saying, if you hadn't watched the movie, you definitely should. I think it would be great. It's a really good movie.
But I think that is that's all the questions I had. If anyone has any last minute questions to ask Tyler or for us to discuss, now would be the time to put them in. Otherwise, I'm going to kind of wrap things up soon. Watch party? I don't know. I have been thinking about like organizing stuff in the Discord to do a watch party soon. Would you guys want to watch Coraline? I think that'd be fun. I think it would be fun to do a watch together of Coraline. I've been thinking about organizing stuff.
I think that would be big fun.
Mm-hmm.
I, just like as a child, am more than happy to watch this movie again.
I was thinking about watching I was thinking about organizing a watch together for Valentine's Day. It wouldn't be Coraline, but I was thinking about like dipping my toes into like organizing something, and then we can do like we can schedule to do Coraline next. So I think that could be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, if nobody has questions and nobody has anyone, I will go ahead. You can hop out of the car.
Oh, I'm jumping. Let me stick my head out. Whoa.
Whoa. So that was fun. I had a really good time talking about this movie. I love this movie a lot. This movie, I have run this movie into the ground, just like Tyler has. But I had a good time. I'm glad that everything was working well enough. I know that there was some internet scuff at the beginning. I'm really not sure why that keeps happening. I'm gonna have to check to see why. But it worked out in the end. That's the important bit. And I do really want to start, I have to, as the kids say, stop being a pussy and actually invite people to do this with me. Because I do want to start, like, talking with other people and, like, inviting people to come onto the show, onto the stream, and talk about their favorite horror movies. So I need to suck it up and start doing that. Because I would really like to start doing this more often, because I really care about horror movies, and I care about scary movies, and they mean a lot to me, and I want to share that with other people. But he fell into chat. He fell down the hole. Can I touch him? Touch. Poke. Poke, 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 poke. Okay. But let's see. I do actually really want to organize a watch together for Valentine's Day. I think that would be fun. It probably wouldn't be on Valentine's Day, and I've been thinking about the logistics of how I want to do it. I see other people do watch togethers where they still stream. They like stream their reaction, and they have like a little like a timestamp on screen so that anyone coming in can just match up to where they are. And I think if I did that, I would also stream it to the Discord so that people who are in the Discord can watch at the same time, but people who aren't in the Discord can still watch on stream. Or, like, see reaction on stream and follow along on their own. So I think that might be how I do it. I don't know. If anything, maybe it will, like, gain a little bit more traction, I suppose, for the Discord so people can see it more and see that there is one. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in there. Woo! But I think if we were to watch something for Valentine's Day, I'd want to find a Valentine's Day horror movie, and then we would plan something for to watch Coraline. Because I think Coraline would be fun. I think that I want to watch My Bloody Valentine, because that's a really good movie. It's pretty graphic though. I think it's like an 80s movie. But it has a lot of practical effects in it, and it's really good. So I think that would be a fun one. But yeah, we'll see. It's tentative at the moment. I'm gonna do some more interest checking on it. But for now, let me see. Tomorrow I have a drawing stream scheduled. That's tentative though, and it might get canceled. Or I might play something, or I might, like, play a game. I don't know. I'm testing Sundays. I don't know if Sundays are gonna be... I want to start streaming on Sundays, too. I would like, ideally, to stream Fridays and Saturdays consistently, and I want to do Sundays more often. But... we'll see. I have some stuff that I want to draw. Like, I want to do some Valentine's Day art, so I think that would be a good day to do it. But I'm going to find somebody to raid to. We're gonna raid somebody. So let me see who is available to be raided. Kieran is live. So what is Kieran doing? Kieran's doing Persona 3. So I think we're gonna raid Kieran. Ugh. So everybody have fun over there. Again, I will see you tomorrow. If I do not see you tomorrow, I will post an update on Twitter and my Discord. But I hope everyone has a good Saturday night. I will see you next time. Please be safe. Be nice to Kieran. I'm going to put in the raid message. Feel free to use it if you wanna. You don't have to. Okay, so I'll see you later. Bye. I have to actually make the raid. That is an important part of it, isn't it? Raid. Okay, we're raiding. We're raiding, boys. Bye!